The day was oppressively hot, the Lagos sun beating down mercilessly on the funeral crowd. Zara sat at the back, away from prying eyes, her wide-brimmed hat shielding her face. The preacher's voice droned on, but her mind raced. She wasn't there to mourn her father, Chief Obinna Okonkwo, a man she'd barely known, but to uncover why her mother had insisted she attend. The moment the final rites ended, Zara approached her mother, Nkechi, whose face was a portrait of unspoken grief and determination. "Why am I here, Mama?" Zara asked, her voice a sharp whisper. Her mother hesitated before pulling Zara aside. "You deserve to know the truth about your father," Nkechi said, her voice trembling. "He left behind more than memories. He built an empire, a multi-billion naira business empire, hidden under Emeka's name. It is your inheritance." Zara's heart skipped. She had grown up with nothing but her mother's stories of how Chief Okonkwo had loved them but had been forced to keep their existence a secret because of his first wife's powerful family. Now, to hear that she had a claim to something so massive sent a jolt of electricity through her veins. "Emeka," Nkechi spat the name like venom. "He'll never give you your due willingly. You'll have to fight for it." 2 weeks later, Zara stood in the grand lobby of Okonkwo Industries, the empire her father had built. The glass walls reflected her determination. She had come prepared with legal documents proving her connection to Chief Okonkwo. "Mr. Emeka Okonkwo doesn't see visitors without appointments," the receptionist said coldly. But before Zara could argue, a man emerged from the elevator, a tall, polished figure with a smirk that could cut glass. "Emeka, you must be the illegitimate daughter," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "Whatever it is you think you deserve, let me assure you, you'll get nothing." His words were a challenge, and for Zara, the fight for her birthright had just begun. Zara couldn't sleep that night. Emeka's mocking smirk replayed in her mind like a broken record. His casual dismissal of her existence fueled her anger. She sat at her desk in the small apartment she shared with her mother. Papers scattered before her, documents proving Chief Okonkwo was her father. But Zara knew it wasn't enough. To claim her share of the inheritance, she needed more than legal proof. She needed allies and leverage. She needed to expose the cracks in Emeka's armor. The next morning, Zara visited her father's lawyer, Mr. Alabi. He was a stout, aging man with kind eyes and a wary demeanor. "Your father always wanted to protect you and your mother," he said, after hearing her story. "But I can't help you, Zara. The business was officially handed over to Emeka years ago. Your father trusted him to safeguard it." Zara leaned forward, her voice firm. "Then why did he keep me a secret? Why didn't he safeguard me and my mother too?" "There's more to this, isn't there?" Mr. Alabi hesitated, then sighed. "There are rumors, irregularities in the company's accounts, suspicious deals, but I don't have the proof." That was all Zara needed to hear. She left the office with a renewed sense of purpose. If Emeka thought he could intimidate her into silence, he was wrong. Her first stop was a former employee of Okonkwo Industries, a man named Dapo. He had worked as an accountant for the company before being abruptly fired. Meeting him in a small, dingy cafe, Zara carefully pried into his knowledge. "Emeka's hiding something," Dapo said, his voice low. "There were transactions, huge sums of money vanishing into shell accounts. When I started asking questions, they got rid of me." Zara felt a chill run down her spine. Corporate fraud. If she could uncover the truth, she wouldn't just have a claim to the company, she could destroy Emeka. But as Dapo slid a flash drive across the table, he whispered, "Be careful. People who dig too deep, they don't always live to tell the story." Zara's resolve hardened. She wasn't just fighting for her inheritance anymore, she was fighting for justice. Zara sat in her apartment, staring at the flash drive Dapo had given her. She plugged it into her laptop, her fingers trembling. The files revealed a maze of transactions, millions of naira, funneled into untraceable accounts. The name Epsilon Holdings appeared repeatedly, a company Zara had never heard of. As she sifted through the data, she uncovered invoices for goods that didn't exist, contracts with ghost companies, and payments to unnamed individuals. This was more than fraud. It was a web of corruption. Her chest tightened as the weight of her discovery sank in. That evening, Zara decided to confront Emeka directly. She waited until dark and drove to the Okonkwo mansion, hiding her car a few blocks away. The estate loomed like a fortress, its high gates guarded by armed men. Zara crept along the perimeter, searching for a way in, but before she could act, headlights illuminated the driveway. A convoy of black SUVs pulled in. Emeka stepped out, flanked by two men who carried themselves like professional bodyguards. They disappeared into the house, but not before Zara caught a glimpse of something chilling. Emeka handing a thick envelope to one of the guards, who nodded grimly. Zara's instinct screamed danger, but she couldn't stop now. She returned to her car and drove home, determined to take the evidence to the police. However, as she reached her apartment, a dark sedan pulled up behind her. Two men in suits got out, their faces cold and unyielding. "Miss Zara Okonkwo?" one of them asked. Zara's breath caught. "Who's asking?" Without warning, the men lunged. Zara screamed, dodging just in time. She ran toward her apartment, her heart pounding as footsteps thundered behind her. She barely made it inside, slamming the door and locking it. From the window, she saw the men retreat to their car, one of them making a call. She didn't need to guess who sent them. Emeka knew. As Zara's breathing steadied, her fear turned to fury. If Emeka wanted to intimidate her, he had underestimated her resolve. She would not back down. But the question lingered. How far was Emeka willing to go to silence her? The morning sun filtered through Zara's curtains, but there was no warmth in its glow. She hadn't slept. The attack from the night before played in her mind like a bad movie. It was no longer just about claiming her inheritance. Her life was at stake. Determined to stay ahead of Emeka, Zara sought out Dapo. They met at a secluded cafe in Ikeya, her nerves on edge as she scanned the room for potential threats. "He knows, Dapo," Zara whispered, leaning across the table. "Two men tried to grab me last night. They weren't amateurs." Dapo frowned. "This is worse than I thought. Epsilon Holdings isn't just a front, it's tied to powerful people. If Emeka goes down, he's taking others with him. They'll do anything to protect themselves." Zara clenched her fists. "Then we need to move fast. What's our next step?" Dapo slid a folder across the table. "This is everything I've uncovered about Epsilon Holdings and its connection to Emeka. But if we want to bring him down, we need public exposure, someone they can't bribe or silence." Zara's mind raced. "The media," she said. "If we can leak this to a reputable journalist, the story will spread like wildfire." Dapo hesitated. "It's risky. They'll come for you harder." Zara's gaze hardened. "They already tried. I won't let fear stop me." That night, Zara reached out to Tenny Alade, a renowned investigative journalist known for exposing corruption. Tenny agreed to meet her the next day, but as Zara prepared the documents, she received an anonymous text. "Stop digging, or you'll end up like your father." Her blood ran cold. She had always believed her father died of natural causes, but the message suggested otherwise. Was Emeka responsible for his death? The thought made her stomach churn. The meeting with Tenny was tense. Zara handed over the evidence, her voice shaking. "This isn't just about fraud. My father's death might be connected." Tenny nodded. "I'll investigate, but you need to be careful. Once this story breaks, the backlash will be severe." As Zara left the meeting, she felt a mix of relief and dread. The truth was coming to light, but the shadows around her were closing in. Would she survive the storm she was unleashing? The day the story broke, Lagos erupted like a volcano. Headlines screamed of Epsilon Holdings' fraudulent dealings, Emeka's embezzlement schemes, and possible links to a suspicious death. Zara's father, Tenny's expose was thorough, backed by the evidence Zara had risked her life to gather. It became the talk of the country, sending shockwaves through boardrooms and political circles. Zara stayed hidden in a safe house arranged by Tenny. From the small window, she could see the city moving on as though nothing extraordinary had happened. But she knew better. The power players were scrambling, and Emeka was the target. Later that evening, the news confirmed her suspicions. Emeka had been arrested by FCC agents in a dramatic raid on his mansion. The footage showed him being led away in handcuffs, his face a mask of rage and humiliation. Zara felt a wave of emotions: relief, vindication, and sorrow. She had won the battle, but at what cost? Her father's legacy was tainted, her family divided beyond repair, and the empire she had fought for was now a crumbling edifice of deceit. 2 days later, she visited her father's gravesite for the first time in years. The air was cool, the only sounds the rustling leaves and the distant hum of the city. She knelt beside the grave, her voice breaking. "Papa, I thought I wanted justice. I thought I needed to prove something to the world. But all I want now is peace, peace for you and for me." She placed a single white rose on the grave and stood, a quiet resolve in her heart. The next day, Zara shocked everyone by declining to claim the empire. "It's not mine to have," she told a stunned boardroom. "The wealth was built on lies. I'll start my own legacy, one built on truth." She poured her efforts into creating a foundation that supported small businesses and young entrepreneurs. Her story inspired many, turning her into a symbol of resilience and integrity. As she walked out of the boardroom for the last time, the weight she had carried for so long seemed to lift. Zara didn't need the glass empire. She had forged something unbreakable herself.